I was fighting for my life in the ICU when the doctors warned this night could be his last. But my family said, "We can't come, your brother's party is more important." When they finally arrived, they found only an empty bed and my letter. Their faces paled as they read it. "Thank you for being here with me today. I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you are. I'd love for you to share in the comments what city or country you're watching this from and what time it is there now. Let's begin our story together." The call came, as always, at the worst possible time. I was neck-deep in a debugging session for a client whose project was threatening to derail. The glow of my monitor, the only light in the office of my small apartment. The cheap coffee I'd been consuming for hours had turned acidic in my stomach. Then, my phone, with its distinctive ringtone for Mom, shattered the fragile concentration I'd managed to build. Honey, her voice, usually tinged with an artificial sweetness, held a note of urgency I knew all too well, the prelude to a request, always framed as a dire need. "Hi, Mom. What's up?" I tried to keep my tone neutral, a skill honed over years of practice. "It's Tyler. He's, well, a little short on money for this influencer launch party he's planning. You know how important this is for him, for his career. He just needs a little bit more to make it truly special, to impress the right people." I closed my eyes, pinching the bridge of my nose. Tyler, my younger brother, was 24 and perpetually on the verge of his big break. This month, it was becoming an influencer. Last month, it was a cryptocurrency scheme. Before that, a revolutionary app that never made it past the conceptual stage. Each venture required a significant capital investment. My capital. "Mom, I just gave him money for the venue deposit last week, and before that for the photographer." My voice came out flatter than I intended. That familiar guilt-laden sigh crackled down the line. "Well, if you don't think your brother's future is important, fine. After everything I've done for you too." It was a warped, scratched record, but it still knew how to pluck the most sensitive strings. After Dad died, when I was just 18 and Tyler a clueless 14, I made a promise. He'd gripped my hand, his frail and trembling, his voice barely a whisper. "You're the man of the house now, Edie. Take care of your mother and Tyler." And I had. God, how I had. My own college fund had been diverted to pay the mortgage arrears and a mountain of debt Dad left behind. I'd worked 2, sometimes 3 part-time jobs while slogging through community college, while Tyler breezed through high school as if nothing mattered more than which party to attend. I even missed my own pathetic 2-year program graduation ceremony because Tyler had managed to get into a fender bender with a car I'd co-signed for and needed me to handle the crisis. "Okay, Mom," I said, the words tasting like ash. "How much this time?" The knot in my stomach, a constant companion whenever she called, tightened. It was always like this. I was the family ATM, the stoic, reliable provider, rarely thanked, often subtly criticized if I didn't acquiesce quickly enough or with sufficient feigned enthusiasm. Mom, the master manipulator, always played the martyr. Tyler, the charming, golden child, floated through life on a cloud of my money and her adoration. His smallest, most insignificant accomplishments, usually made possible by my funds, were celebrated with disproportionate fanfare. I remembered the dinner Mom threw when Tyler finally got his driver's license on the 3rd try. You would have thought he'd won a Nobel Prize. Meanwhile, my promotion to senior developer at my company a few years back had merited a distracted, "Oh, that's nice, dear," before the conversation inevitably circled back to Tyler's latest need. Tyler's signature dismissive gesture, if I ever dared suggest caution about one of his schemes, was a flick of the wrist and a condescending roll of his eyes. "Don't be such a downer, E.T. You wouldn't understand. This is about vision." He always bragged he was going to make it big soon, but deep down, I knew he secretly envied the quiet, consistent competence I'd painstakingly built in my own career, a competence he had no interest in cultivating for himself. His resentment manifested in passive-aggressive comments about me being boring or all work and no play. The forced joviality of family dinners, usually held at the old family house I was still helping to pay for, always left me feeling like an outsider looking in. I'd sit there listening to Tyler's grandiose plans and Mom's gushing praise, the smell of her overcooked stew mingling with the cloying scent of the cheap air freshener she favored. It all felt like a performance, and I was the silent, uncredited producer. This latest party of Tyler's was supposed to be his grand entrance into the world of social media stardom. The budget was obscene, enough for a down payment on a modest car, but he needed it, Mom insisted, to project the right image. The phrase "project the right image" was another one of her favorites. A persistent exhaustion had settled deep in my bones over the past few months, a dull ache that lived behind my eyes. I'd been popping ibuprofen like candy, attributing it to stress, the long hours, the looming financial hit of Tyler's party. I'd already given Mom a considerable sum towards it, cash I'd had to pull from my emergency savings. The day I handed over the final installment for the party, it poured rain, mirroring the bleakness of my soul. I drove to the family house, the wipers struggling to clear the deluge. Mom met me at the door, hand outstretched before I'd even fully stepped inside. Tyler was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone, occasionally barking orders at Mom about some last-minute party detail. "Oh, you're a lifesaver," Mom chirped, snatching the envelope from my hand. Tyler didn't even look up. "Make sure it's all there, Mom." DJ Vortex upped his rates. "Don't you think you should try to be a little more enthusiastic for your brother, Yin?" Mom chided, already counting the bills. "This is a very important night for him." I just nodded, unable to articulate a single word. The weight of it all, of all those years, pressed down on me. I mumbled a goodbye and headed back out into the storm. Driving home, I was physically and emotionally drained. The city lights blurred through the rain-lashed windshield. My head throbbed. A wave of dizziness washed over me, sudden and intense. The glare of oncoming headlights seemed to explode in my eyes, blindingly white. A horn blared, a terrifying, urgent sound that was almost immediately swallowed by the roar of my own rising panic. I jerked the steering wheel, a futile gesture. The tires lost their grip on the slick asphalt, the car fishtailing. The world tilted, a sickening, stomach-churning lurch. Then, the deafening, violent crunch of metal on metal. My head snapped back against the headrest, then forward against something hard. An explosion of pain erupted behind my eyes. My world became a symphony of shattering glass and screeching metal. The smell of burnt rubber, gasoline, and something hot, metallic, and unmistakably visceral filled the car. And, just before the darkness swallowed me whole, a single, chillingly clear thought pierced the chaos. They won't even notice I'm gone. Until they need something. I emerged slowly, as if swimming up from a vast, dark ocean. The first sensation was pain, a blinding, diffuse agony that seemed to emanate from every cell in my body. Then came the sounds, the rhythmic, monotonous beeping of machines, a hushed conversation nearby, the rustle of starched fabric. Smell was next, sharp and sterile, the unmistakable antiseptic scent of sickness. I tried to open my eyes, but my eyelids felt like lead. A cool hand touched my forehead. "Yen, can you hear me? You're in the hospital. You've been in a car accident." The voice was female, calm and kind. With a monumental effort, I managed to crack open my eyes. Blurry shapes resolved into a woman in scrubs leaning over me. Nurse Emily, her name tag read. Behind her, the sterile white tiles of a hospital ceiling. And 4 lines snaked into my arm. A pulse oximeter clipped to my finger, its tiny red light, an unblinking eye. "What happened?" My voice was a dry, raspy whisper. My throat felt like sandpaper. "A bad one, I'm afraid," she said gently. "Multiple fractures, some internal injuries, and a nasty concussion. But you're a fighter." Dr. Peterson came in shortly after. He had tired eyes, but a compassionate demeanor. He explained the extent of my injuries in more detail. His words were measured, but the gravity was unmistakable. "Yen, the next 24 hours are critical. We've stabilized you, but you're in a precarious state. We've been trying to contact your family, but the number we had on file didn't connect." A flicker of something, rooted hope, perhaps, or just instinct, made me give them Mom's current number. The thought of them, of Mom, even of Tyler, being here felt like a primal need, a yearning for an anchor in the sea of pain and confusion. It was a yearning I knew, even then, would likely be betrayed, but the battered child in me still yearned. Nurse Emily said she would call them immediately. I drifted in and out of consciousness, a hazy, pain-filled limbo. I must have been more lucid than I realized, because I remember hearing parts of the conversation when she finally got through. And then I focused, with chilling, preternatural clarity, as she put the phone on speaker, presumably so Dr. Peterson could intervene if necessary. The connection was bad, crackling with static. Mrs. Anderson, Nurse Emily's professional tone was clear. This is Nurse Emily from City General Hospital. I'm calling about your son, Yin. He's been in a serious accident. He's in critical condition. There was a pause, then Mom's voice, distant and tinny, with the distinct sound of music and laughter in the background. Tyler's party was in full swing. Oh, good heavens, she exclaimed, her voice conveying more annoyance than alarm. Well, look, tonight is just impossible. This is Tyler's big launch party, you see? So much planning. All our friends are here. We simply can't leave. A cold terror began to seep into me, colder than the Ford dripping into my veins. Dr. Peterson took the phone. His voice was firm, cutting through the background noise. Ma'am, this is Dr. Peterson, the attending physician. I need to be very clear. Your son is critically ill. I cannot stress this enough. There is a real possibility he may not survive the night. We believe it's imperative his family be here. Another pause, shorter this time. Then Mom's voice, the annoyance sharpening her tone, stripping it of any pretense of concern. Well, doctors always exaggerate to scare you, don't they? Tyler would be absolutely heartbroken if we ruined his big night. This is his night, doctor. Tell him we hope he feels better. We'll try to stop by in the morning if things calm down. And then, unmistakably, Tyler's voice in the background, loud and impatient. Mom, hang up already. The caterers need you. Tell them not to be so dramatic. Click. The silence they left behind was louder than any explosion, more damaging than any physical blow. My chest constricted, a band of ice tightening around my lungs, squeezing out not just the air, but the last vestiges of hope I'd clung to about them. My heart didn't break. It shattered into a million frozen fragments. Every cherished family photo that hung on the walls of my memory seemed to warp and blacken at the edges, turning into indictments. The steady, rhythmic beeping of my heart monitor felt like a cruel taunt, a countdown not to death, but to a decision I didn't know I needed to make. The hours that followed were the longest of my life. The pain was a relentless tide, ebbing and flowing, but the emotional agony was a deeper wound, colder and constant. Flashbacks flickered behind my closed eyelids, a torturous slideshow of my life's sacrifices, paying for Tyler's endless string of failed college courses while I ate ramen to make rent, foregoing the down payment I'd painstakingly saved for a small condo of my own so Mom could have the new kitchen she desperately needed. The countless times I'd been the designated driver, the emergency contact, the financial rescuer, the fixer of all their problems. Always taken for granted, never truly seen. My father's last words, "Take care of them, son," echoed in my mind, no longer as a sacred vow, but as the jingle of chains I'd willingly worn. I had fulfilled my end of that tragic bargain. They had simply exploited it. Nurse Emily was my only human contact during that desolate night. She checked my vitals with gentle efficiency, offered sips of water through a straw, adjusted my pillows. Her presence was a small, flickering candle in the overwhelming darkness. Once, when a surge of pain made me gasp, she simply rested her hand on my arm for a moment. "You're fighting hard," she said, her eyes holding a deep, compassionate understanding that my own mother couldn't or wouldn't show. That small kindness meant the world. As the first, bleak light of dawn began to filter through the blinds, something inside me shifted. I had survived the night physically, but emotionally, something had irrevocably broken. The raw, searing grief for the family I thought I had, or at least desperately wanted, began to cool, to solidify. It morphed into a diamond-hard anger, then into a chilling, almost preternatural clarity. I saw their exploitation, their profound selfishness, laid bare. They chose a party over my pulse. This wasn't just casual neglect. It was an active, profound devaluation of my life, of my very existence. I wouldn't die for them, not anymore. And I certainly wouldn't live for them, not another day. This realization, brutal as it was, became a kind of perverse fuel. My battered but not extinguished survival instinct roared to life, demanding not just that I live, but that I live for myself. The fight wasn't over, it was just beginning. A different fight. As dawn painted the sterile room in shades of gray and pale pink, I beckoned Nurse Emily closer. My voice was still a raspy croak, but there was a new firmness in it, a resolve that surprised even me. Paper, I whispered, pen, and my phone, if it survived the crash. I need to make a call. Nurse Emily looked at me, a question in her eyes, but she wordlessly complied. My phone, miraculously, had survived, tucked inside my laptop bag that some paramedic had salvaged. The screen was cracked, but it powered on. My clumsy, stiff fingers fumbled with the keypad. There was only one person I could call, one person who had always seen the cracks in my family's facade, even when I'd been so determined to plaster over them. Chris, my old college roommate, now a successful graphic designer living across town. His voice, when he answered on the third ring, was thick with sleep. Huh? What the hell? It's 6 a.m. Chris, I rasped, the effort of speaking making my head spin. I'm at City General Hospital. ICU. Car accident. The sleepiness vanished from his voice, replaced by sharp concern. What? Are you okay? What happened? I gave him the brutally condensed version, omitting no detail of my family's callousness. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy. When he finally spoke, his voice was tight with a fury I rarely heard from him. Those goddamn leeches. I always knew they were something special, but this is a new low, even for them. I'm on my way. Hang in there. Chris, I said, a desperate plan forming in my mind, fueled by the icy clarity that had taken hold of me. I need to get out of here today. I can't stay here, waiting for them to waltz in like nothing happened. Are you serious? You're in the ICU. I know, but staying here, on their terms, feels like a different kind of death sentence. I need your help. And Chris, bless his loyal heart, didn't argue further. Okay, man. Okay. What do you need? Over the next few hours, weak as I was, a fierce, lucid determination took hold. With Chris on the phone, acting as my proxy, we set things in motion. He contacted a lawyer he knew, a shrewd, pragmatic woman named Ms. Carter, and explained the situation. I managed to have a brief, raspy conversation with her, authorizing Chris to act as my liaison for immediate needs. The priority was getting me out of there and beginning to sever the financial ties that had bound me to my family for so long. While Chris made arrangements for a discreet pickup and a temporary safe place for me to recover, I began to write. Every word in that cheap hospital notepad was an effort, my hands shaking, my vision periodically blurring from the concussion. But every word was also a link being ripped from the chains that had bound me. This letter wasn't just a goodbye. It was a declaration of independence. A final accounting. It was a precise, irreversible act of severance. Dr. Peterson came in mid-morning, his brow furrowed with concern, when Nurse Emily informed him of my intentions. Yen, he said, his tone gentle but firm, I strongly advise against this. You're stable. Yes, the immediate crisis of the first night has passed, but you're far from recovered. Leaving now is a significant risk. You need ongoing monitoring, physiotherapy. Doctor, I interrupted, my voice surprisingly steady. I appreciate everything you and your staff have done. You saved my life. But staying here, knowing they could walk in at any moment with their empty apologies and self-serving excuses, that is a greater risk to my sanity, to my will to fully recover. I need to do this on my own terms. He looked at me for a long moment, his gaze searching. Perhaps he saw the unwavering resolve in my eyes, the look of a man who had been pushed past his limit. He sighed, a sound of resignation. Against medical advice, then, you'll have to sign the forms. Gladly. My hand trembled as I scrawled my signature, not from weakness this time, but from the sheer, terrifying, exhilarating weight of the freedom I was claiming. Chris arrived looking grim and determined, a small duffel bag in hand. With his help, and that of a very discreet private medical transport he'd arranged, I was wheeled out of the ICU and into an unmarked van. Every movement sent jolts of pain through my body, but it was a clean pain, a physical pain infinitely preferable to the soul sickness my family inflicted. It was shortly after 11 a.m. when Mom and Tyler finally deigned to show up at City General Hospital. I pictured them strolling in, preening, perhaps. Tyler checking his reflection in the glass doors. Mom rehearsing her, concerned but burdened mother lines. They'd expect to find me pathetically grateful for their presence, ready to forgive and forget. And, most importantly, ready to resume my role as their financial life raft. Instead, they found an empty, stripped bed. The only sign I'd ever been there was a single, sealed envelope, lying starkly on the bare, plastic-covered mattress. I could picture Mom's initial confusion, then her irritation. "Where is he?" she'd demand of the nearest nurse. "They moved him without telling us." The nerve. Tyler, ever self-absorbed, would probably be checking his phone, impatient. Probably just wants attention. So dramatic. Then Mom would see the letter. She'd pick it up, frowning, rip it open, her expression shifting as her eyes scanned the neat, deliberate handwriting, from confusion to annoyance, then to dawning, open-mouthed horror. My letter was calm, devoid of hysterics, but brutally, factually honest. Underscore, by the time you read this, I will be gone. Last night, Dr. Peterson informed you that I might not survive. You chose Tyler's party. I'm not going to list all the sacrifices I've made over the years. The ink would run out. But let's just recap a few highlights. The $15,000 I gave you, Mom, for Tyler's European study trip, which, as we both know, was a 3-month party tour of Spain. Or the down payment for my own small apartment, which I sacrificed so you could have the kitchen renovations you desperately needed for the house I was already helping to pay for. And, Mom, those $5,000 I gave you last month, specifically for the urgent roof repair you swore the house needed before winter? I know it went straight into Tyler's account to fund this very influencer launch party. I accidentally saw the bank transfer notification on your tablet the morning I dropped the money off. Didn't even try to hide your deception very well, did you? The roof is still leaking, isn't it? I could smell the dampness in the attic last time I was there. Your choice, your blatant prioritization of a party over my possible death, was simply the loudest, most undeniable confirmation of what I think I've always known deep down but stubbornly refused to see. I was never truly family to you. I was a function, an ATM, a convenience. Therefore, I have instructed my lawyer, Ms. Lauren Carter of Carter and Associates, to begin immediate proceedings to financially disentangle myself from you completely. All joint accounts are being addressed as I write this. My will and all insurance beneficiaries have been changed this morning. My friend, Chris Parker, is now my sole emergency contact and holds my medical and general power of attorney. You lamented my absence from Tyler's party and the potential disruption thereof, more than you contemplated my actual death. So I am giving you what you truly value, my permanent absence from your lives. Do not try to find me. Do not try to contact me. Live the lives you have chosen, with whatever resources you yourselves can generate. This is not a negotiation, it is a final statement. Underscore. I could almost hear Mom's gasp, feel the letter fluttering from her suddenly numb fingers. He knows about the roof money. She'd whisper, her voice cracking, the blood draining from her face as the specific, undeniable lie was laid bare. Tyler would snatch the letter, his usual swagger still clinging to him like cheap cologne. Then, as he read, especially the part about the financial cutoff, that bravado would evaporate like mist in the sun. "He can't do this," he'd shriek, his voice rising in panic. "My brand, my sponsors. He's trying to ruin me. This is so unfair." Then would come Mom's signature wail, the one she deployed whenever her manipulations were challenged. "But we're family. How could he be so cruel, so ungrateful, after all we've sacrificed for him?" The profound, breathtaking irony of her words, as always, would be completely lost on her. And perhaps Nurse Emily, who had witnessed their belated, unconcerned arrival, and now their theatrical meltdown, would step forward. In my mind, I saw her, calm and steady, her gaze unwavering. "He asked for you all night," she'd say, her voice quiet but carrying the unmistakable weight of judgment. The doctor was very clear about his critical condition. Their carefully constructed facade of a loving, concerned family would crumble under that silent scrutiny, right there under the harsh, unforgiving fluorescent lights of the ICU they hadn't deemed important enough to visit when it mattered. That, I thought, was a fitting first consequence. The small, anonymously furnished apartment Chris had found for me felt like a sanctuary, a world away from the sterile confines of the hospital and the toxic atmosphere of my family. Physical recovery was a long, painful journey. My fractured ribs screamed with every breath, my leg throbbed in its cast, and the concussion left me with lingering headaches and a frustrating mental fog. But each day, I was a little stronger, a little clearer. The physical pain, clean and sharp, was a welcome change from the deep, soul-bruising ache of betrayal. Miss Carter, the lawyer Chris had recommended, was a godsend. She was shrewd, empathetic, and fiercely protective. She handled the legal disentanglement with ruthless efficiency, creating an impenetrable firewall between me and my former family. Their increasingly frantic calls and messages, alternating between tearful pleas, angry demands, and guilt-tripping tirades, were all routed through her office. I never had to hear their voices again. There were dark days, of course, nights when I'd wake up sweating from nightmares in which I was trapped, suffocating, unable to escape their grasping hands. Waves of grief would wash over me, not for the family I'd lost, but for the family I'd never truly had, the one I'd spent a lifetime yearning for. The house I grew up in, the one I'd poured so much of myself into, suddenly felt alien in my memory. Every family photo I can picture on its walls now feels like an accusation. I confessed to Dr. Morgan, the therapist Ms. Carter had connected me with, a testament to my own blindness. Dr. Morgan listened patiently, helping me unpack years of emotional neglect, manipulation, and my own ingrained patterns of self-sacrifice. The consequences for my mother and Tyler began to unfold, relayed to me in carefully edited snippets by Chris, who heard things through the grapevine mostly, via my Aunt Katie, my father's younger sister. Katie had always been a quiet observer, kind to me in her own undemonstrative way, and had long harbored her own reservations about Susan and Tyler's treatment of me. Twist number 1. My knowledge of the roof money deception had hit them hard, a direct blow to their ability to play the victim. But twist number 2, the full extent of their financial dependence on me, was the one that truly brought their house of cards crashing down. Tyler's influencer career imploded spectacularly without my continued financial infusions to prop up his image. The designer clothes he bought and returned, the luxury cars rented for photo shoots, the bots he paid to inflate his follower count. His online persona was revealed as a hollow sham. The sponsors he'd bragged about never materialized. The lavish launch party, for which he'd racked up considerable debt, assuming I would cover it, now had creditors hounding him. For the first time in his pampered life, Tyler faced real, unavoidable consequences. His arrogant entitlement shattered against the wall of reality. Aunt Katie said he'd become a whiny, petulant mess, blaming everyone but himself. Mom's situation was equally dire. Without my substantial monthly contributions covering the mortgage and her myriad expenses, the facade of her comfortable, middle-class lifestyle crumbled. The leaky roof I'd mentioned in my letter became a grimly appropriate metaphor for her entire collapsing financial structure. Aunt Katie discreetly informed Chris, who then relayed it to me, that Mom had also taken out several high-interest personal loans and a second mortgage on the house over the years, always assuming that I, reliable yin, would eventually bail her out. Now, foreclosure notices were arriving. She was forced to try to find a job, something she hadn't done in over 30 years, and her outrage at this humiliation was apparently epic. Her carefully curated social standing plummeted as whispers about the ICU abandonment, subtly fueled by Aunt Katie and a few other relatives who finally felt free to speak their minds, circulated through her community. Many who had once admired Susan's devotion, as a mother now saw her with new, clearer eyes. They attempted smear campaigns, of course. I heard secondhand that I was mentally unstable, ungrateful, that I had cruelly abandoned my sick and grieving mother. But the truth, even in its quietest telling, held more power. Through it all, I focused on healing. I changed my phone number. I found a small, quiet satisfaction in simple things. The taste of freshly brewed coffee, just for me. The sun on my face during short, painful walks in the park as my leg healed. The quiet companionship of Chris, who would drop by with groceries or just to sit and watch a movie. He never pressured me to talk, but he was always there to listen when I needed to. I started drawing again, an old hobby I'd abandoned years ago, finding a strange solace in the precise lines and the gentle shading. I learned that family isn't an obligation to endure endless pain, to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. It's supposed to be a safe harbor, a place of mutual respect and genuine care. Mine had been a shipwreck, and I was finally learning to swim away towards my own shore. I began to build my chosen family, anchored by Chris' unwavering loyalty and strengthened by a few new friendships I tentatively began to cultivate. One final, formal communication passed between us. Or, rather, between our lawyers. Ms. Carter sent a cease and desist letter to my mother and Tyler, via their own hastily acquired, and likely overcharged, attorney, firmly stating that any further attempts at contact, direct or indirect, would be met with legal action for harassment. Any mail they attempted to send was returned unopened. The door wasn't just closed, it was bolted and barricaded. A year passed, then another. The physical scars faded, leaving only faint white lines on my skin. The emotional ones were deeper, more complex, but they no longer ached with the same intensity. They were a part of me now, reminders of battles fought and won, of a profound and necessary rupture. I lived a simpler life, in a smaller apartment, working a less demanding but more fulfilling job as a consultant for nonprofit organizations. I was dating a woman named Olivia, not Nurse Emily, but someone new, someone kind and funny who saw me for who I was, not what I could provide. I was, for the first time in my adult life, truly at peace. Sometimes, late at night, I'd look out the window, at the city lights, and a distant pang would resonate in my chest. Not for them, not anymore, but for the lost boy who had tried so desperately to earn a love that was never truly there to be given. He was gone now, and in his place was a man who understood his own worth. They say blood is thicker than water, but I learned that sometimes, water is what you need to cleanse yourself of toxic blood, to wash away the poison. My family became a storm that threatened to drown me. I chose to swim ashore. What choice would you make? If the people who were supposed to love you most became the source of your deepest pain, what would you have done?